Hi, another class. So today I'll be going over chapter 28, smaller little chapter over some, in my opinion, random topics. So I'll do the best I can on explaining what you absolutely need to know versus what it's okay just to kind of know in the back of your mind, but you're not going to actually practice for a little bit. And then I will definitely go over assignment 5 as well. So this chapter is about modern JavaScript. The good news for you guys, some of this stuff I've already actually talked about because I'm very on top of making sure that you guys are learning modern things, such as I don't know if you remember, but I've actually talked about this ES6 before. I think it's from 2015. That's where they brought in let and const. Those are the two things that you guys have noticed from that, where before that you used var. You can still technically use var, but it's kind of out of standard now. But vanilla JavaScript, I don't know why they call it vanilla JavaScript. I mean, I think they try to allude that vanilla is bland, but I don't. I like vanilla flavoring, so I don't know what they're trying to allude to there. But yeah, JavaScript. When we're talking about just JavaScript, like core JavaScript, a lot of people call it vanilla JavaScript, where there's no flair to it. It's just the core JavaScript functions, and then you can add things on top of it like React and Angular and Vue. So even I was looking at some Vue, not on my team, but there's a team that sits next to me that he's doing some things in Vue, and I'm like, oh, show me some of that. What does that look like? And so whenever we're talking about like JSX, he has JSX files, stuff like that. So some of this stuff you will see in the workplace. We've also already talked about arrow functions before. Those are just those unnamed functions. But luckily, you guys have already seen that from me. I have not went over the spread operator. And to be honest, now that I'm thinking about this, I meant to put something in my live coding about it, and I did not. So the spread operator, how you have a list. Well, sometimes you want the items in the list, but you don't want the whole list, like you don't want the array, you don't want the brackets around it. So you can actually do like a dot, 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 and then the array name, and it'll spread out those elements of those lists, of that list or array. So you don't have to say, array bracket 0, array bracket 1, or iterate over them. If you want all of the items in a list, you can use the spread operator, and it'll just it'll throw all of those in there. It is used whenever we come across a good example. I'll definitely show off that. I did spend most of my time trying to prep for the map. So I have a lot of live coding examples of the map. Remember, anytime you do a map, it's just a key value pair. So I got a couple questions from people about, well, what's kind of like the difference between a map and then like an object? And to be honest, a map is kind of like a type of object that has key value pairs. It's just an object is more structured for your specific purpose, where a map is more generic. JSX, there's a lot of people posting, so I'll read the post here in a second after I get done with this. JSX, I think the book says JavaScript XML. That might be what it is. I originally thought it was, JavaScript with HTML, because that's what you're hybriding there. I did not research the origin of that, but what this, and I will kind of show a little, not an example of this, but whenever we get into React, we're usually writing JSX files because we're going to combine HTML with JavaScript, and our JavaScript's actually going to write our HTML for us, and it's just like a hybrid file there. So it's not an XML, it's not a HTML file, it's not a true only JavaScript file. It kind of breeds those together and displays HTML using JavaScript. Again, I wish that I would talk more about TypeScript, but everything that you absolutely need to know about it for the remainder of this course was in the book, where it's just the visualization of you have a variable, colon, and then what is your data type? So is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an array? Is it a whatever it is? And all that's doing is it's statically typing, meaning it's or strictly typing. It is declaring that whatever your variable is has to be that type, and if you change it, it's going to throw an error on you. So I could let my let's say random equals a string, and then later on I can say random equals a number, and in JavaScript I can do that. In languages like Python, you can do that. But then there are other languages, and then the superset of TypeScript, you type it and then you can't change it afterwards. So some people were saying, I guess I didn't put the vocabulary word in there, superscript or superset. Why it's calling TypeScript a superset is whenever you type in TypeScript, you're typing JavaScript, but it has its own set of rules. But everything in JavaScript you can do in TypeScript, but it's adding an extra layer on it. So superscript or superset means that you're including the subset, but you're adding an extra layer on it. There you go. Transpilation, that's just you're transposing from one language to another. So in this case, TypeScript, the computer does view TypeScript slightly different. It has to like read it differently. And so whenever you write a TypeScript file, most browsers do not know how to read TypeScript natively. So whenever we build our TypeScript, it actually has to convert it to vanilla JavaScript. And one of the ways that the book was saying that they suggest is using this builder called Babel. And I've seen this one around. It's one of the many that's out there. And it's a pretty good one, so that it's the one that it suggests. But again, we're not going into TypeScript, so it's kind of hard for me just to spend a lot of time on this. But you do need to know that TypeScript, you can use everything we've learned in JavaScript, you use in TypeScript, but you also have to type your variables. And then whenever you do that, the browser cannot read it like that. So then you do have to build it. You have to run it through a translator so that then the browser knows how to interact with it. And that's pretty much all of 28. And then just the other expectation is that the graded assignment is due on Monday. So let's do a little bit of live coding. So this is the checklist auto-graded, but I put my class files inside of here just so that you guys can see them. Comment some of these out. So all of this is based on map. So there's a few different examples on map. And because this is a JavaScript file, I don't know if some of you have kind of realized when you're running just JavaScript, you have to like actually tell it how to run. So then that's where in the terminal we have to do like node and then tell it, hey, use node to actually run this stuff. And with assignment 5, some people were getting confused that the scripts here, we're used to like on assignment 3, we'd run node, and then the scripts would like have to communicate to one another. But I'll show you how for assignment 5, you actually don't need to do that. It's actually bringing it in a different way because it's a web application, not just a JavaScript application. So back to just JavaScript. If I wanted to do map, let's say that I had an array of numbers and I just wanted to double all the numbers. I could say, hey, take this array, dot map, So it takes every single one of them individually. Remember our arrow function. This thing is what's getting passed in. So the first time it does it, it's 1. The second time it does it, it's 2. Then it's 3. And it says each time you're going to map this, you're going to change this into and actually run this function. You're not changing it. You're running this function with this variable name. So I named it doubled, but I could have named it whatever I wanted to, but that's the reason of the function. It's going to take every number, multiply it by 2. So whenever I get this done, it gives me my 2, 4, 6 instead of 1, 2, 3. So map each element of whatever it is and do this thing to it. So I think I've shown that a long time ago, but I told you you wouldn't need to know it until later. We can do the same thing with objects instead of numbers. So this is still an array because it has the straight brackets. This thing's going to take the user IDs, or I'm going to try to get the user IDs from it by doing users.map user. So that's this whole entire object. That goes in here. And then I'm going to say grab the user.id. So grab the user.id, which would be 1 and 2. So these are the user IDs. I could change it so that I can actually grab the names. So instead of user IDs, I could do user names. But then over here, instead of grabbing the user.id, I can do the user.name. And then it says it doesn't like it. Oh, that's because I printed out user IDs. I forgot I need to change that if I'm going to change the variable name. There we go. So now it says Alice and Bob because it's Alice and Bob. So this map, it has to be on like an array, and you're just going to pass in each element and say what you want to do to that element each time. It is going to return whatever you say here, and then kind of put them together and make a new array that returns those things. Here's another one that I found online. Let's say that I wanted to do some dates. Now these are strings, but let's say that I want to actually change them to dates, because sometimes you need the date object to manipulate with dates. So I'm going to take the raw data, the dates here, just the year, month, and day. I'm going to pass them in. The variable that I'm using is date string, but date string represents each one of these individually. And I'm going to return a new date with that date string. So let's see. It returned an array, but these purple things are a date object that has the Z at the end. That's like the offset, the zone offset. So you might see like after a Z, you could do like a -6 or -5. I don't know what we are right now. Well, I don't know what central is right now. Is it if it's -5 or -6? But it's going to be changing on Sunday. Did everybody remember daylight savings Sunday? So it'll change on Sunday. So it's just another example. Because we've done this to uppercase before, I thought it would be fine to do this. If you wanted to take a whole list and just change all of the words to uppercase, you can do the map and do that. So it made hello and world uppercase. Now we get into the interesting ones. This is how we might use map here in the next couple weeks. I haven't looked at the lessons quite yet, but I don't know if you remember that this is like a tag. I can put tags, like I can do paragraphs, I can do divs, I can do whatever tags I want to. But whenever we start building in React, oftentimes we are building HTML in JavaScript, and that's what this is right here. We're taking different items, whatever they are. We are going to map the item with the index number. So index would be 0, 1, and 2. And then I get to create HTML objects by this. So whenever I run this, these would actually be, that did not. There we go. Let's see if this looks a little better. There we go. Remember inside of these literals, I have to use $sign with these, where when you're using JSX, I don't think we use the $signs. That's the cool thing about JSX is, so JSX would look more like this, where it actually knows what this is. And so this could be a part of a JSX file. It's just a slightly different syntax. If I ran it like this, it would say, hey, I don't know what this, that it wants to use this as a less than sign because I'm in a JavaScript file, and vanilla JavaScript doesn't know what this is. So the fastest way for me to show something like this is to make it a literal and do this. And then you can see that it prints out the key value and the actual text value that it would display in HTML. And one last one, which is almost identical to this, but slightly different. Sometimes you're going to have to populate drop-down items dynamically. So let's say that I had a drop-down list that I wanted somebody to select from. These are called options. So you would have options, and let's say I don't know what I want to put in it. So you could technically use a fetch here and grab some items. So let's say that I had an API that gave me all the fruits that I wanted. I could go fetch them. I could go grab all the fruits, make them into a list, and then I could do a map to iterate over every item in the list. And then I could assign it to be an option, which would be an option in my drop-down menu. So it just prints out the HTML part, which is the option tag with the value and the text. So hopefully that gives you a couple ideas on how to use map. The other thing I wanted to show you that is kind of a hybrid, I wanted to remind you of the fetch planets that we did last time. So I'm going to show you the yeah, there we go. So this is the one where I created this button. I don't think the text did. I think it had you click somewhere down here. But when I click this, it gives you a planet name and a picture. And then every time you click, it iterates through. So hopefully you're remembering that from last class. What I decided to do is, instead of iterating through them all, I wanted to make it so that it displayed all of them. Okay? So I thought, okay, so how can I do this? So I'm definitely going to onload. I want you to go fetch. These are all the planets, just like we did last time. I'm going to fetch all the planets. I'm going to get that response. I'm going to return that response .json. So I'm switching it to a JSON. I'm going to pass that JSON into this function. This function is going to say, go get my element that I want to put it in. Now, here's where I did it differently. I think on the other one, they had the div go into the destination, and then separately I had an image. And so I had a div tag and I had an image tag, and I had all these different tags down here. On this one, I just decided for my basic HTML, I'm just going to have a div that's called destinations. So I have my H1 destinations, but then I just have this one div. That's all I have. And so that's why you don't see me getting several elements. I just grab one. And what I say for this, and I call it a container. So divs and containers, this is not like containerized code. This is just like generic use of container. Let's go make this destination be a container. And then there are two ways to do this. So I'm going to show you both of them. I could take the JSON and do the for each. I don't know if you guys remember that we can do that on arrays. We do the for each. I can do the arrow function here. So for each, I'm going to grab a planet and the index. So remember, I'm grabbing this from the JSON. The JSON was the response from the fetch. So this is all the planet information that's coming in. So I'm going to grab a planet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create element. I don't think we've done that in this class, but these are extra things that you can do. You can create another div just like this, and I'm going to call it to be planet element. I'm going to set the inside of that planet element div, the inside, to be a literal H3 planet with the planet name, image with the source with, and then I don't think we've talked about accessibility too much, but that this alt, this pops up whenever the image doesn't appear. And it also allows for screen readers to kind of read it. So there's some things there. And then I put on the same styling that I did before, which is the 250 pixel height. I just created that in a literal. And then I said, with this bigger div, the one way up here, I'm going to append this planet div that I just created. But I'm doing this for each. So for each planet, create a div, put the planet name and image in it, and then append it to the hierarchy of the destinations container. That's all I did there. And then anytime we do a fetch, it is kind of good to do error handling. So I caught any errors and said that I had an error if I did. So that's all my thing there. So for each, do that. So whenever I run this, it gives me 1 planet, 2 planets, 3. It just goes through all the planets. And then whenever I go here and inspect element and I look at my actual elements here, I don't want that. Okay. You'll see that I have a div called destinations. And then that destinations has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divs in it. And each div has a planet with a source, with an image source, a planet with an image source. So this is what it created in my for each, was a new div with no ID. I didn't tell it to. I could have told it to, but I didn't. And then I did it this planet. Now, because we did a map, I wanted to say, hey, I can do this with a map. So it's the same thing. Instead of the for each, so now my thing's gone. It just has the div of destinations, but it didn't put anything in there because I got rid of my code here. I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to walk through this with the map. So remember, my planets are in this JSON, and my JSON, I can do a JSON.map. And again, instead of doing function like this, I can do an arrow function. And I'm going to take the planet index just like above. With the map, sometimes I think because this is strictly like this is a literal, I think I have to do return there. I don't think it'll like this. Okay, so on a map, if you don't say return and you only have one thing in here, oftentimes it does return that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. If otherwise, you can write a 50-line function in here and just return what you need to. So it's just a function, whatever you do. But yeah, I think because it's not a variable, I do have to use the word return here. But if you see the literal's the same, this one I say div. So instead of up here where I say create element div, I did a literal and then I did a div either way. And I could have done that up here if I wanted to. I wanted to show you different ways of doing this. The rest of it is the same though. The only difference is with the map, it's going to give me all of these individually. So this is a map. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the join on the map or the planet elements on this map to join everything together. So instead of them being 6 different elements, when I join them, now they're just one big element. And I'm going to set the inner HTML of the destinations to be that. So it's going to be as you can see, it works now with all the planets. And then if I go inside here, it looks the same. There's my 6 divs. And here's the same look that I had before with the inside. So this is how you create HTML using JavaScript, using vanilla JavaScript. Again, if this was a JSX file, I wouldn't need these literals. It would know that the div is there. And the syntax is slightly different. But remember, with JSX, I have to build that into regular JavaScript because the browser doesn't understand JavaScript. So that's why I'm not showing it right now, and I'm going to wait until the React one because I don't want to have to actually install Babel and install all these things. Since we're going to use it next time, I'm just going to do it next time. So I'm going to hopefully show this again, maybe using JSX and kind of like the React way. So this planet thing, hopefully show either next time or the time after. I can't remember when that'll be best, but I'll show you this again using JSX instead. I think that's all I had for the actual lesson part. I still am going to go over the checklist. And because I saw a lot of postings, I'm going to pause a second, try to read all of these chat messages that were going on, and then I'll go over assignment 5. I don't know if you want to potentially bring up assignment 5 while I'm doing that. All right, somebody's confirming that assignment 6 was easier than assignment 5, which is good to know. Yeah, I think difficulty-wise, assignment 3 is the hardest, and probably assignment 5 is maybe the second hardest, maybe. Billy, I'm sorry I didn't look at it ahead of time, so I don't know which. If you're talking about the map, yes, Jennifer's right. A map creates a new array, so it does not change the original, if that's what you were referring to. Yeah, and some of you were talking about time zone. Yeah, Zulu time is like the UTC universal time where we have the offset here. So Brendan, yeah, the point of JSX, I could go over a little bit more of the why, but it'll make a lot more sense after we get into React. So I'm just going to wait on the why and how to use it once we get into React. And JSX, I think they're compiled. I'm pretty sure they're compiled. Yeah, they're not executable by the browsers. I think some of this I talked about after you guys asked, but I wasn't paying attention. I did skim over some things about how to join different files. Like, trying to think of this without going too much in a circle. Unfortunately, I'm going to point to things over here on my side over here, but I want you to realize that these things are different things. So if I have a JavaScript file, actually a JavaScript program, such as graded assignment 3 had no HTML in it. It was not visual. Everything we had to do is either through the terminal or through our test. There was absolutely no HTML. That's when you have to bring it in using the require. So with the require, that is connecting JavaScript files together. The interesting thing is once you bring in HTML and you put it into a browser, not into Node. So that's the other thing. If we were going to run assignment 5 using Node, you would, for example, if you have not already noticed, on example 5, you're going to use 2 different JavaScript files, both script and script helper. And so some people were asking, how do I tie those 2 together? And unfortunately, because you're going through the browser, you don't need to. If you wanted to write down here and do like Node script.js, and you wanted to also include some of the functions from script helper, then yes, you would have to use the require or sometimes somehow import that into your script. But that's not the purpose of web development, to join JavaScript files together. So that's Node. Node is just a JavaScript program, no HTML. Now let's talk about how we're doing things now. We are doing things in the browser. Everything starts off with an index.html or some kind of HTML, but usually it's an index.html. If we look at this index.html, let me close some of these. This is the reason why you're not having to tie those together. When I go here and I right click and I do live server, it is loading both of those scripts. So now inside my HTML is combining everything I need. And it isn't Node running anymore. It's my browser. My browser is the one that's running. But now my browser, because I've linked it right here, has both JavaScript files that it needs. So you do not have to link those anymore, because all of the functions are now accessible to your browser, and your browser will just grab the ones it needs when it needs it. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. I will try to do something right on the fly here. This is going to be horrible, but hopefully it at least answers. It's not going to answer the why. So sorry about. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Right. So whenever I do a console log fruits, do you see these square brackets around there? This is an array. Let's say that I want all the items in the array, but I don't want the array as a whole. I can do this spread, and now it's the elements inside the array, but it's not an array anymore. It's the elements individually, like sucked out of the array. That's what the spread that's what the spread does. I think is it the book that tells the example? I do feel a little bad that I forgot to touch on that, so I'm gonna. Not that, this one. So what it's saying here is, let's say, not that one, this one. If we wanted to find the weekly total, we could have, let me just copy this, put it, and I'll. on this weekly total, this says that we need to pass in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday into my function here. My problem is that's 7 different elements. What I did was the miles hiked this week, I made an array of all of these things. And I did, that's a lot of miles. I wish I could do that. Hiking may not be the same as running. Anyway, so we have all of these miles. We did 5 miles every day. But whenever we pass it in, you can't have this. Like the computer can't understand that. So we have to have it as the best option is to have it as an array. What we could have done, let's see what it does right now. So what it does right now is it takes and it says find weekly total and it passes all of those in, but it separates all of them. So instead of passing in the whole entire array, it passes in 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So it does it individually. That's what this spread function does. If I didn't do this, if I did it like this, it would only be one thing. So I could have done something like weekly array. This is how we would have done it before the spread operator. And then done like a weekly array dot for each I'm coming up with this on the top of my head, so this is not going to be as good. Ooh, did not want that. So I could have done something like this. I'm hoping this makes sense. I could have passed in without the spread. I took away the spread. I would have passed in one item, which would have been the array, but then I'd have to do some kind of operation to go over each of the things in the array to then get the total. And that's one way to do it. And to be honest, I would have been perfectly fine if everybody did this. They're just trying to show you that there are going to be times where it's going to be a little more understandable for the user or for the developer if they go ahead and spread these out and then do these things individually. I personally don't think this is the best example. And again, I did not come up with a better one, so I'm not helping the why or when you would use this quite yet. But I'm just showing you the how. The how is when you spread them, it passes them in as individual elements rather than one array. Go to the comments real quick. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go over the assignment. I think most of those questions are the assignment. Yeah, so Micah, that's what yeah. And then, so yeah, is the spread operator more efficient, a better standard? No, but it's not a worse one either. It's personal preference. For an example that I had here, or for the book giving, either one would work. I have seen, I just can't remember them off the top of my head. I have seen times where the spread operator is much better than looping. And you don't even have to loop. Sometimes it's, I've seen the append Hopefully this doesn't throw anybody off. But let's say that I wanted to add more miles. It wasn't this week. It's like miles hiked, and it wasn't just in a week. And I wanted to add more onto here. Instead of doing the append or whatever, I've also seen things like this where it's miles hiked equals something like this, where I'm making an array, or in this case, I'm resetting the array to be the elements, because I could not do this, because this would give me, this array would have two elements. This would be my first element that would be an array itself. Let me print that out at least, so you can, and then I'll be done. No. Right. So this, when I print this out, if you look, it's an array with all the 5s and then the 7 on the outside. And let's say that I didn't want this to be a separate array. I wanted all the elements to be in the same array. Once I spread these out, even, I don't know why it didn't just keep going here, but if you notice, these are all, there's no other array. There's no other brackets. They're all elements inside the same array. So I don't know if that maybe helped at least understand. Again, I'm not doing very good on the why. I get that. But I guess on the how, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense, or what's happening at least. All right, I'm done with that. Let's go back to assignment 5. There's a lot of comments, sorry. Most of these are on assignment 5. Hopefully I answer your questions, because there's a lot of them in there that I was just skimming. Okay, so first of all, I want to go over what's in here. Then I'm going to show you the textbook for assignment 5, and then I'll come back here and kind of show you where to put those things. So what we have right now, these green things, remember, you won't have, and you won't like that. That's for my lecture today. So don't just ignore those. It tells you from the beginning to ignore this bundle.js, so you're going to ignore that. To be able to even run the tests, you do need to run npm test or npm install, and the npm install will load the test suite, which they are using Jest as their test suite. So it'll load that, but to just run it in your browser, you don't actually have to do npm install. But I would, just so you don't forget later. And then once you run npm install, you can run npm test. So I'll do that right now. Npm install, and then npm test. And what I thought was very interesting, and this isn't because you needed to change it as much as it doesn't want you to break it, but I think one test passes even whenever you run your npm test the first time. This test, though, will break if you do other things. So it just makes sure that when you do other things, you don't fail this test. Okay, and I'll talk about the test individually as well. So that's where my package.json loads my test when I use npm install. The readme is the readme. So there's 4 files that you care about. You care about the index.html. You will not touch this, but I'll go over what's inside there. And then also your browser cares about the styling. So here's all the styling, but you are not going to touch any of this either. But you do need to know how it's linked together. The only two files that you're going to touch are the script and the script helper. So after I go over the instructions, I'll show you where to put your stuff in there. But let's go over the HTML to see what it even looks like. So the first thing I would do is I would just run it. And here's your live server. It says launch checklist form. And there's nothing in there. I can type stuff in here. I can hit submit. It clears my stuff, but it doesn't really do anything right now. And it says awaiting information before launch. So it has some interaction, but not a lot. If you go over here to inspect and you go to the console, you'll see some problems here. Anything in the bundle, you don't need. So just ignore anything here. And to be honest, some of these other errors, I can't remember which ones you need to worry about and which ones you can ignore. I'll show you the final version working as well, so you guys can see that. Right. So it looks like we're going to put in a pilot name, a co-pilot name, a fuel level, and a cargo mass. And just based on assumption, I'm assuming that your fuel level has to be a certain number or bigger so that they know you have enough fuel, and your cargo mass cannot be too big or else you have too much mass on there and it won't lift off. This, I think, will let you know if you can lift off or what you need to do. And I can't remember what the other stuff is. So let's look at the actual assignment then. So obviously the first thing you want to do is go to the repository and get it, fork it, and then clone it to your local, and then do the npm install. And the only thing that you really are going to be running, I don't use Node at all whenever I did all of this. I only just did this live server, and that's all I did. Okay. Now, some of you are like, well, I did console log. I'll talk about that in a second. So this is what you have. It says, you may notice a file called bundle. This file contains no code except for a comment. I don't know why it says no code. You know that you've been reading this course book enough. You know that they misprint things in here. So just know that just keep going. It is accurate that you're only going to be working on these two JavaScript files. And you do not need to modify anything else. So you're only working on these two JavaScript files. It does say that you see a warning stating that the require statement, and this is not working. This is okay, because this require statement is necessary for the auto grader to function. It does not need it for HTML. Okay. I don't know if you want to, I don't know what to potentially write down or not write down, but so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to work on the form. That's what you're going to work on. Where's my, oh, it's in my other, right. You're going to work on these things right here. These are already set up for you. They already have IDs for you. So, here's your form field. That's your class, your ID, there we go. Pilot name ID. And then it's going to have you use the, if you copy and paste, it'll be input bracket name equals copilot, or I don't know if you remember that kind of thing, but it literally, you just go to the form validation thing lesson and copy and paste a lot of that into this, and that's how you get these. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to change this function, which I'll show you in a second. This function is going to return either empty as a string, not a number as a string, or is a number as a string. That's one of the ones that's more straightforward. There's multiple ways you can do it. You can use the is not a number value. You can, whenever you do empty, I think I saw somebody else say that you can't do 2 equal signs with a blank string. You got to do 3 equal strings, 3 equal signs with a string, empty string, to see if it's actually empty. So definitely post helpful hints in Discord. And all of this is in the script helper. So I'll show you where that is. You're going to use this to complete the form submission, but the first step is just to complete the validate input. When you complete the validate input and run your NPM test, you will pass one more of the tests. So after you get done with adding alerts, you should have 2 tests that pass. When you are doing this one, which is updating the shuttle requirements, this is all of your validating. So everything to deal with the form and validating is task 2. You will have, I think, 6 of the 10 tests done after this. You need to validate, and you need to do some other special little things, meaning if the shuttle is not ready for launch, the color should be changed to red. If it is ready for launch, I think its default is green, but change it back and forth between green and red if it's good or not. It tells you your if statements. It says that if the cargo mass is too large, more than 10,000 kilograms. So if it's more than 10,000, you're going to say the shuttle's not ready to launch. The wording here isn't amazing, but I think based on the wording here, you can at least get the concepts. But I do think that there's a struggle on like where to put it. It's kind of harder to see where to put it. So I'll tell you how to do that. Let's do that right now. So I'm going to separate. So task 2. Most of the stuff. Actually, it'll be in both of them. Task 3 isn't that big. Task 2 is the big one. So this is the adding destination info. This is task 3. I don't know if you guys want to make mention of that. You're not going to touch this until task 3. Validate input. That's the first half of task 2. This is going to return empty, not a number, or is a number, whatever it says in the book. You're going to type that. Those are your the 3 things. They have to be case sensitive and everything. Your form submission. This is a very, very large part of your code right here. Do you see how it's the script helper? So this is not where you're actually going to put the submit. This is the function that you're going to call upon submission. I'll explain that here in a second. But this form submission is where you're going to do all of those if statements. Is the cargo too large? Do you have enough fuel? You're also going to validate your input. So is the Copilot a string? Is the fuel a number? All of those things. Now, what it wants you to do is use to help. It wants you to, like for pilot, you're going to grab the pilot's name right here. And when you grab the pilot's name, you're going to do something like validate input pilot. And then this will tell you, is it a string? Is it empty? Is it whatever? So it's going to validate some of that stuff for you to help you decide, is that a valid input for the pilot? The same thing is for the co-pilot. But these 2 things, you're looking for a string that's not empty. Whenever you do fuel level, you want that to return that it's a number. I know that some of you would just want to do something like that. I don't know if that's, I can't remember the syntax off the top of my head. Oh, is not a number value. Some of you would be tempted to do this, but this will actually be up here with the test input, and then you're actually going to validate it and see what comes back. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This is going to be the majority of your code right here. So then the next question is, so let's keep going through this form. The myFetch has nothing to do with the form, so don't worry about it until the next one. Pick a planet doesn't have anything to do with the form. So these two are task 3, not task 2. Ignore these for a little bit. You're only focusing on these two right here on this page. But the question was asked, I'm not calling this function directly from my HTML. If you look, the HTML, whenever I submit this thing, oh, you haven't added it. You haven't added the event listener, right? Because that's what we're looking for here, some kind of event listener. Well, you know that your button is form submit. So I would probably add an event listener with the grabbing this button and adding a event listener of click on this thing. But you're going to do that here. So this says onload. This is for planet response. This is task 3. You're going to ignore all this. You're going to open up down below. And the first thing that I would do is add event listener for the button. And so then the question is, whenever I get the button, you need to grab all of these inputs. I think there's 4 of them. You're going to grab the 4 inputs, and you are going to pass those inputs right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. And so then the question was, document makes sense for the document. And then I'm pretty sure the list is the list of all of these things. I'll triple check that here in a second. So on here, you're going to add an event listener. And then at the end of the event listener, so inside this event listener, you are grabbing all the information from the form. And then you're going to call we're going to call this function. So inside your event, this is going to be inside your event listener. You're going to have something that looks like this. But inside your event listener, you need to declare what this is. So document equals, list equals, pilot equals, co-pilot equals. You got to declare what each of those are. And then you're going to pass it into this inside your event listener. And that's pretty much all you need to do on this right here. So grab all the information in your script, pass it into your script helper, and then this is going to validate, check, and then it will also do the visual stuff, meaning it's going to change the color. It's going to change the text of items. It's going to do whatever it needs to say here. So it says change the text of launch status. Well, what does launch status even mean? If you go to index.html, thought there was, why is it not? No result. Did I 100% misspelled that? Oh my goodness. So this says ID of launch status. So when it says change the text of launch status, your text status right now says awaiting information before launch. And so you need to change that text, do the .enter HTML, and change the text of that. On your pilot status, I don't know if you noticed, but none of these showed up. That is because your style of your items here, your style, your visibility is hidden. So you need to not hide this anymore once you click the button. So these are all the small little things. So you do need to really look through this HTML. When I get rid of this, and I go back to my thing here, it actually shows all of my stuff right here. So that's what the visibility does. You're going to change the visibility to show it, and you're going to change the text. Like I said, your script helper right here, this form submission is going to be a very large part of your script. Validate inputs, probably like 8 lines long, not very big, with like 3 if statements, maybe 4. But this thing's going to be a lot. Your script here, you're going to add an event listener for the button. You're going to collect these things and submit, and then run this thing. That's pretty much all you're going to do here. Okay. Yes, do not change anything in the HTML. You're going to call the ID here. So you're going to say pilots. You're going to go grab this. Remember, you can do like pilot status equals document dot get element by ID pilot status. And then you're going to say pilot status dot enter HTML and then type your text. We've done things like that before. This is where you get to practice that. The document's just going to be the document as a whole. And the reason why, your script helper, I'm going to say something, I don't know if it's 100% true, but I'm assuming that they are hoping that your script here has access to your document. But because your script helper got brought in, I don't know. Okay, I think originally they wanted this to be your whole entire document, so then you can do document dot get element by ID, and it would use this document inside there. But the more I think about it, you should be able to reach document from your script helper if it's being imported here, which it is. So, yeah. I talked a lot on that. The good news is task 3 is pretty straightforward. Task 3, and I'm going to show you a final example so you guys can see, and that will explain almost everything for task 3. What's the expectation there? I wanted to go back to this. The main thing is you are going to go grab a random planet. So you guys remember the random function that you guys have done a long time ago. You're going to grab the planet stuff. You're going to get a random number. Then therefore, you're going to get a random planet. And then you're going to display that planet information on the HTML. All of this is dealing with fetching. So you're going to go fetch it. And then you're going to populate it and grab a random one. So let's look at the script here. This says that you're going to grab the appropriate helper functions to pick a planet from a list of planets and then add that information to your destination. So here's where you're going to call your functions. Well, what functions are you going to call? You're actually going to call these. This is how you actually add the destination info. So you need a document, which you are like, that's the document. So you need a name, diameter, star, distance, moon, and image URL. Well, how are you going to get that? You're going to get it from this fetch right here. you're gonna go grab all the planets. Remember, the S is on here because it's all of them. You're gonna grab the planets, so you need to type in the URL right here. And then you need to maybe do some things inside this function here, which will actually grab the planets as an array. You have all the planets as an array here. When you say pick planet, this is where you're going to do your random number. And so you're just picking one planet. So you're going to pass in all the planets to this pick planet, and then you're only going to return one planet. No, not planets. You're going to return one planet. So right here, you could say something like let planet I do want to talk about do the math.random. Yeah, the math, whatever we've used before with the random math operator. I did want to go over a structure of a function real quick. I've described this a couple times this week, and I think that I just need to iterate it here. Anytime you have a function, the first thing you want to know is, what do you want to return? So this says pick planet, so I know that I need to return a planet. And then I start working I start working functions from both ends, from the front and the back. So if I know if I need to return a planet, well, what information do I need to gather to return a planet? And that's going to be all the planets as a group. And then because I want to return a planet, you could do let planet equals and do one long thing here. You could do that. Technically, you could do return and not even use the word planet and put your random number planet thing all right here. Some of you might know how to do that. But I want to set up this mental structure. When you grab planets, that's what you're passing in. It is often common to set whatever you are going to return at the very beginning, just so you have that on your mental focal point of I want a planet, and I know that it's going to be an object. So I'm just going to set planet to be an object right off the bat. And then my next step is asking myself, well, how do I get this planet? And so all of the stuff in between setting the blank planet and actually returning the planet is how do you get that? So that's going to change based on every single function. Just like my fetch. This is something that LaunchCode set up for you. They said let planets returned, and they didn't say equals blank or anything, but they did say, hey, I want this thing and I'm going to return this thing, and in the middle I'm going to figure out how to get it. That's how most functions work. When you validate your input, what do I want at the very end? Well, I want to return empty. I want to return, start typing this stuff out, whatever it was asking. And then start backwards. What do you want at the end? What are you given? And then how do you get from what was given to what you're wanting to return? So it's a good structure for you guys to always think about on the functions. Anyway, this one, get a random number, put a planet in, and that's pretty much it. Besides just basic, a little bit of manipulation, because it's also going to do this. You're going to uncomment this, right? I forgot what I did there. Oh, literal, I think. I think it's think I did a literal. Anyway, you do need to figure out some of these things because like your star is going to be this, but your diameter, you need to grab it. So just you're passing in all the stuff here. Make sure that you're actually including it in here as well. They give you the structure. All right, I'm going to show you your what it looks like at the very end. Then I'll answer some questions and then we will be done. Oh. All right. So on this one, this is what it looks like at the very end. This grabbed a random planet and it told me this information. Anytime I refresh, it's going to grab another random planet. So that's how you know this is working. Again, that's task 3. It should just be a random planet each time. On this thing, there are some validations. When I hit the submit button, it says shuttle not ready for launch. It says that I'm ready for launch, Copilot's ready for launch, but it says my fuel level too low for launch. And it does say that my cargo mass is low enough for launch. So it's my fuel level that has a problem. Now it says shuttle is ready for launch. And do you see how it turned green? So once all of these things are met, so let's go through some of the other validations. If I hit submit here, it pops up with an alert. I don't know if an alert, I can't remember if they explicitly said an alert was needed or if you could just maybe console log it. Is anybody? Can't remember. But it does tell me all fields are required. So, okay, so I'm going to type something in here, type something in here, type something in here, type something in here. When I hit submit, it says make sure to enter valid information for each field, meaning fuel level and cargo mass should not be letters, they should be numbers. And then it says make sure to enter valid information for each field. We might enter a day where people use numbers for their name, but this is not going to be one of those. I can't remember what the other validation was. So hopefully this makes sense on what you're doing. Task 3 has everything to do with creating and displaying a random planet. So there's your planet, random. And then your other one is validation of forms. The best help that I had was going to the form validation unit or chapter and copy and pasting a lot of that information over and then really editing it to what I wanted. Some of you were like, well, how do I do console log without using Node? And that's what this right here is for. So whenever I do console log, so if I hit submit here, my console log would be right here. I'm just going to show this. Go back to main. So this is the original one that is not working. These are fine. So if right here I said on load, I can just do console.log here. So then whenever I refresh this page, what? So because of this line 8, what's line 8? I'm just going to comment this out for a second. Yeah, there we go. So if you have an error above this, it won't let you see it. Because we're not doing this until task 3, I would just comment that out and then write your event listener. Remember, you're going to add event listener. But whatever you console log should be right here. And I think many of you need to get used to that rather than running node. Because this is more like how you would do it in the workplace is right here. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Go ahead and stop recording. I'll still answer questions afterwards.